Why hello, Age of Nations fans. This is Daniel DanQ, creator and producer of the series, and with me is...
Daniel Rodrigues, who voices the characters Hugh and Spice for this episode.
Thank you for joining me, Daniel.
Thank you very much for having me.
I co-wrote this episode with co-executive producer Gordon Illuminata Smith, and we also took turns editing one another's work, which itself was based on a storyline that Smith and I started and expanded upon. And apparently Stan directed this episode again. You haven't scared him off.
It's always useful when you've got a director.
Yes, that helps. And the wardrobe and props were provided by Stan and his wife once again. Now, this opening scene featuring Jeanette as the Egyptian pharaoh Ninetcher, I actually have the first names of a few of our live actors. I'll try to mention that. It was Stan's first visually produced effect from Adobe Premiere, because up to 1.11 we'd been using Windows Movie Maker. And that was actually something that was not scripted, but Stan wanted to include as part of the episode. And that movement of the troops across the screen, that really reminded me of the screen you received when you captured a city in the original Civ.
Yes, sir.
It was really nice, actually, when it first opened up, and I watched the credits, and I was thinking, okay, what am I expecting for this episode? And there was this really nice, CGI thing going on, nice background as well. I was like, that's really quite impressive. Moved on a bit.
And that opening scene we just had, we have a new recurring character, Colonel Maynard, voiced by Polton Forum user Voven, and Kyle Ixnay Stadler returns to voice Councilman Odysseus, who swears for the first time in the series.
I think I've got one coming up as well, haven't I?
Yes, you do. Very soon. And of course you would want to talk about you. And here is a new bearded individual we see on screen wearing the Egyptian yellow. And the character we saw there right there in the orange pants, he was in the previous scene. That's the Parango live actor. His name is Ian. And that was also CGI'd using Premiere. So once again, we've got people being filmed at different times and places, but thanks to the wonders of post-production, it looks like they were actually trying to hurt each other.
Of course, you wouldn't want them to do that in real life, because then you'd have to get insurance and all sorts of other crazy things, and
Yeah, if we reported it. Oh, wait. And so there, once again, we're seeing Parango giving Trigger some orders, because Trigger's kind of in this state of not certain what to do, and Parango's just like, well, what do you think? And Trigger's like, yes, okay, but is he really paying attention? As you can see there, we've got the seacoast right there, which would be familiar. We like to go back to episode 106, which was the previous commentary you joined me on, Daniel, because that episode was about traveling across the sea.
Yes, indeed. Yes, it was. It's a nice little return to the coastline.
It's kind of an on-screen reference to the fact that we're nearest to the Greek city of Delphi, and it's to the west. And I like this here. Just this one little straddling Egyptian unit. I don't think it was very intelligent, because it just kind of doesn't even try to attack. Look at that. Oh, there it goes. Right about now. Oh, there we go.
Crazy. We had that little stray horse come up behind him. We didn't even see it. I mean, what was he doing?
I think he graduated bottom of his class. But actually, the death of that character is a little striking, given the relative action we saw on screen earlier. I really don't notice when the other units drop, but in that case, I do.
It is interesting. It sort of singles him out.
And Trigger carefully adds recommend to the suggestion that should be relayed to Marsh, because Marsh is first general. We actually earlier had Parango with a little kind of insult when Trigger says, well, you're not first general, and Parango says, well, neither are you anymore, fortunately. Ouch.
Yet you managed to arrive
Yeah,
here.
that bearded
was-
felt. Oh, go ahead.
Messenger.
I was just going to say this is a nice update for me because unfortunately due to my sort of busy workload I haven't been able to watch all of the episodes, so there's a few I had to skip, but it was nice to sort of get an update with in terms of where the characters fit and who's changed and things like that.
You seem awfully relaxed.
Yes, and Daniel feels ashamed having skipped a few episodes.
Invasion.
I don't
He will now make up for it by
do.
watching
Please
them all.
forgive me.
3 times.
real one. For all we know, there could be a third force
We've got that line by the fires of Tartarus from Marsh, and again being a reference to Greek mythology, and we work to incorporate these as much as possible to demonstrate the presence in day-to-day culture, because mythology and the religion might very well play a more integral part into the storyline into Season 2. And sometimes it's interesting to see who actually refers to Greek mythology. I mean, considering Marsh's character,
There are more tough
Oh, it's interesting. It's nice to have sort of little hints like that.
Oh, and in the previous scene, the light cavalry joke about, oh, you don't look like light cavalry, so you couldn't travel very fast. That was not my joke, but I did write the skivvies joke. Yes, I did.
Hello, allies! I am Captain Hugh of the British. Our most recent
And so we've got the Greeks in red, the Egyptians in yellow, and now who are these green people, Daniel?
I got some lovely green people there who seem to be protecting me, which is quite nice. The British.
And we saw that bearded man again in the live-action scene, now in British green. What a trooper! Oh. See? If there was any doubt that I made up that skivvy joke there, that's now confirmed.
Must be Tarleton.
Now, we talk about the note of Tarleton's passing. That was not the original intent. Tarleton's character was to have continued well into Season 2, but his voice actor has become permanently unavailable and decided not to recast it, so lucky for Hugh, he got a promotion.
No, that wasn't bad, was it?
What man of mine?
One man's loss is another man's gain.
Injured and exhausted.
Now, it's not to say that Hugh didn't deserve it, but...
Ashes in his lungs. Into our territory to find healers.
And we just very briefly there on the seacoast, we saw floats and coasts, which, makes up the entire Greek navy, which is now going away. Come back! And that looks like quite the Egyptian invasion force coming to Delphi.
It does indeed, doesn't it?
And we see how many Greek and British soldiers are left, so what's the likelihood that this is going to hold?
I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, despite having seen this episode already. But I'm still going to keep my fingers crossed.
Well, we assume that anybody listening to this commentary has watched the episode already. If you haven't, you got it backwards. Now they're right there, that live action scene there with the arrows coming from overhead. I didn't actually notice them the first time, and so then Stan asked me, so what did you think of the arrows? Just a minute. Oh yeah, I liked them.
I remember when we did our first commentary and we were talking about what to do, what you were planning on doing in the future, and Stan's, CGI stuff, and it's nice to see sort of a few updates in terms of what you can do with it, what he's done with the technology, I suppose.
Yes, because before everything was done through Windows Movie Maker, which is fine, but Premiere really does add another element. Not only to be able to do certain things, but to be able to do certain things more easily. Because unfortunately, we can't spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week perfecting this. Unless we add a few more hours to every day, which I don't think is going to happen.
Or quit our real life jobs.
What? We're not getting paid for this? Uh-oh. No wonder those bills are piling up. Uh-oh.
I'm sure in my contract it said I should have some sort of remuneration. I don't know.
Well, I talked about tripling of pay, actually, the last time you were here, but again...
That's correct. I don't think you followed up on that.
Well, if we go back and look at your original amount, I think I'll make it 50 times now. Wow. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, and the live actor we saw there for Odysseus, his name is Max. And again, just as a reminder, most of the live actors do not watch the show. Only the Marsh and the Trigger live actor, the Marsh live actor who we will see shortly, his name is Shane. He's actually seen it, but they're the only ones. And oh, there's a familiar face. Now, this is Spice, and we had last only seen him briefly in episode 105, where he really had a bit part, and Spice's role expands quite a bit, so, tell us about it and your initial and present reactions, if they're different to the evolution of this character.
Oh, definitely. Originally, Spice was like a bit part, and he said a few words, and it was like, okay, and it felt a bit disjointed, but for those of you who've watched the episode now, you sort of see he's much more fleshed out, and he has a lot more to say, so you get a lot more background in terms of what his views are, and how he sees his people, and what he sees for the future of the people as well, which sort of plays a role towards the end of the episode.
Yeah, to give the character a bit more dimension like we had done for Hugh to this point, because this was Hugh's third or fourth appearance at this point, and we've got a pretty good idea of his background, but now Spice gets a similar treatment.
Yeah, definitely.
And there, Spice mentions the mention of the first city, which is mentioned for the first time since Luther and Maven brought it up briefly, which was also in episode 106. Ooh. Scary.
Can you tell Dan is a very, very clever writer?
Oh, and look at that. We're just in. Hugh will be promoted to general very soon. And Spice will take over the council. Wow.
That was a very bizarre scene there with the live actor playing Jason, sort of stepping away from the camera. I didn't quite understand his...
Yeah.
I suppose you're not supposed to understand his crazy murmurings, but...
So that's the live actor Craig, and Stan chose that clip to reflect Jason's situation. Back in episode 110, he was fatally wounded by Achilles and Lieutenant. On Achilles' order, Lieutenant attacked and killed him. And what we have there are lines that Dark Cloud, who was the voice actor for Jason, heard it in previous episodes. But Dark Cloud wasn't available at the time that this episode was being put together. So I went back and used old lines, and that murmuring you heard at the beginning, those were bit lines, but I just reversed them to make it sound like unintelligible nonsense, which it becomes. So that's what's happening right there. And so now Jason is dead. So to this point, he was just, again, fatally wounded and quite delirious.
Ah, right, I see.
And of course, Maynard doesn't seem fazed by Jason's death at all. I mean, yes, he barely knew the character, but it's just like, oh well, he's dead, not surprisingly.
He does, yeah.
It's kind of cold.
Throughout that sort of little bit where we're following, where he's got Odysseus and they're walking down, the sort of conversations between them sort of seem to give that impression that he just doesn't really care.
And even at first, Odysseus doesn't realize the full effect of Spice's grief, but Spice quickly clarifies it with some powerful and ominous words, even treacherous words.
But clearly they didn't want him knowing.
Now, I will admit that it was only in hearing and watching this commentary again recently that Spice is saying about the council being swept aside, yet he's talking to a councilman.
Dangerous words.
Very brave. But remember, he does have those coins he can toss.
Absolutely.
So if Lieutenant goes after him, look out.
Watch your eyes.
And we kind of have some solemn music here, with Marsh being annoyed, yelling at Trigger, and I think Trigger gets one of his best lines to failure. It's written by Illuminatus, at which I could take credit. Marsh asks Trig, could you not have held Delphi a bit longer? And Trigger responds with, what, my wit? Kind of an acknowledgement that Trigger is not a particularly good orator. And there we had Virtue, and hearing for the first time, as well as his live actor Stuart, voiced by Victor Grampos Griff, who also does Trigger. And this is
next.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, were you going to say?
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, actually, that this next sort of 5 minutes of the episode, there's some real storyline expansion. There's lots of sort of twists as well, which is quite nice.
Yes, well, just like we got a very major leap in terms of Spice character, Lookout to this point, I think, comic relief would best describe him.
Absolutely.
Only now, Lookout is disgusted with the decisions to ignore Sparta, and earlier in the season, it is noted how Lookout moved his family out of Athens and into Sparta because of overcrowding, so here we get kind of a confirmation that he's been living there ever since. And Lookout gets banished
You care only for your own head.
by Heracles, no less, who is usually pretty level-headed.
Who does the voices for Heracles, actually?
That would be Stan.
That's Stan. That's what I thought.
He is no longer able to speak for Sparta, so I will.
No suggestion of them being bad. No, I was just, I was just interested because that's who I had in my mind in terms of person.
Oh, does it say, oh, Hugh becomes a general and then promptly dies? Oh. Well, he lived his dream for 5 seconds.
It is all the council cares about.
Now, Marsh here criticizes Lookout for referring to the red enemy, yet he still refers to the Egyptians as yellows, which, you know, typical Marsh. You know, don't do as I say, or rather, don't do as I do as I say, which is, don't refer to people like that.
For help and you cast me out?
And there is Achilles, live actor's name is Max. And again, Achilles is voiced by me, making him very important.
Oh, I'll depart.
At least I like to think so.
I'll return to Sparta.
I like these video clips of animals. We had some before of, I think it was a pig as well, actually.
Yes, we had, I think about it, might have even been in episode 106. Even if it wasn't, ooh, that sounds good.
What was the reasoning behind the animals during those particular speeches?
You'd have to ask Stan, specifically why those are in there, but I think that's just kind of a shot to show what's going on around the farms
Right.
in Athens, just to kind of let people know that, well, perhaps the animals are paying more attention than some of the citizens, because the citizens are pretty busy working, you know, chopping wood and tending to the farms, but the animals know something interesting is going on, if they could only communicate it now.
Fast enough. We may even retake Delphi. Perhaps we can release Calden.
And now Daniel doesn't know what to think about that. What does Season 2 hold? Oh, talking animals? Oh, no!
Age of Nations suddenly turns into Animal Farm.
And we have Lookout calling Odysseus Odie here.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Instead of Audie, as I originally intended it, but voice actor Joe Snoopy 369 Matisse read it as Odie. Kind of a slight hint back to the fact that Lookout hasn't changed entirely, because Lookout had problems with pronunciations before, so I kept it in. And now I have to say this final scene, starting with Lookout leading Achilles to Sparta, is my favorite for a number of reasons. But first and foremost is the music, which I think, again, this is my opinion, and I did select the music, so I might be biased, is the best of all music in this episode, and probably in the top 5 in the series today, just because of how well it seems to set the mood.
Is it something that you guys composed on your own, or was it something that was picked from sort of a sample set of music?
I wish I could take credit for composing it, but no, it's actually from Rise of Nations itself.
Ah, right.
No, I'm not sure if it's from Rise of Nations or the Thrones and Patriots expansion pack.
No,
I forget.
I don't want to have anything to do with this.
But what we do here,
Just
I
like
can't remember
that.
if it's in this particular scene. I
BBB.
think in this scene, as well as some earlier ones, the music speeds up a little bit, or in some cases, the music seems a little higher pitched. Kind of essentially used all of the music in the game to this point, so I was trying to vary it a bit to make it sound new. Or I'd cut, certain songs up,
Yeah.
middle sections, just to make it sound a little different. So here Achilles, quite annoyed with Lookout not agreeing to his plan, is addressing a number of units, and I will say that one of these units that we see on screen is a recurring character, and we will
It's not
find
the chicken, is it?
No. The chicken auditioned, but You see, it moves around too much. It's worse than the units on screen. You know, they move around sometimes with no apparent reason. Yeah. So he didn't make the cut, I'm afraid.
It's very bad for film, moving about. Static. Got to stay static.
And just this is a mention for those who may not be familiar with the game, or just watch the show because. Oh, speaking of animals, look at that. Oh, hello, ugly-looking birds. The shading that you see is just the fog of war, so when terrain comes into view for one or more characters on the screen, the fog is lifted. In case you're wondered, like, man, did they go cheap with the lighting on the set? And so there, Achilles, kind of going with the same character line about, well, make sure that Lieutenant dies one way or the other. Ooh, what is that going to mean?
Well, it leaves us on a nice cliffhanger, actually, on that episode.
Indeed it does. Daniel, thank you for joining me once again.
Thank you very much for having me again. It's been lovely.
Now get busy and watch earlier episodes.